Right, 254. Yosef just revealed himself to the brothers, and Yosef says, "Go get Yaakov Avinu," and Yosef then gives them wagons and sends them up. Now we're on the bottom of page 254. Mamish, the last word on 254. So he says like this: Ula Aviv Sholach Kazos. He sent to his father Asora Chamorim Nosim Mituv Mitzrayim, 10 donkeys carrying from what the Torah says the good of Egypt. The Eser Asonos, and 10 female donkeys, she donkeys. Nosos Bor V'Lechem Mazon Lovi V'Derech. And he says to his father. He sends him all sorts of good stuff. He sends him what the Torah calls from the good of Mitzrayim. Then he sends him 10 donkeys carrying bread and food. So what is the good of Mitzrayim? What is this good? So take a look at the top line, right column of Rashi, top line on page 256. Mituv Mitzrayim. So what did he send him? Matzino Bagomara. He found in the Gemara Sheshalach lo yayin yoshan. He sent him aged wine. Shedas zekenim nocha himenu. Elderly people are, their mind is put at ease from aged wine. So what does it mean? Send Yaakov Avinu some good wine from Egypt. Some Golan wineries. He sent them the finest wine. He went to France and he got some French grapes and made some wine. What does it mean he sent them wine, and why is it that aged people, elderly people, are pleased with aged wine? What's the Torah telling you here? Yaakov Avinu, that's all he needs to drink is some wine now. So the idea behind aged wine, there are two ideas over here at a deeper level. Number one, elderly people, maybe they have trouble sleeping, or maybe you have trouble, don't feel so well. So you drink some wine before you go to sleep, have a hot toddy. Knock you out to go to sleep. I know some young people who do that, but okay, let's say the old, nowadays it's mostly the young people, and they don't stop at wine. But okay, so the idea is like this. An older person, especially a man, as he gets older, a woman, as she gets older, she basically fulfills the same role. Woman fills the same role. She was a mother, now she's a bubby. So she helps with the kids, and she can change the diapers. I see my wife with our grandchild now. She does basically the same things, except that she likes this kid a whole lot more. This is the grandchild. If he gets too difficult, then you just hand him over to the mother. But a woman basically fulfills, she cooks, and her role never ends until she simply becomes physically unable. But her role as a homemaker is the same. A man, he was the guy, he was the head honcho all the time. And all of a sudden, he gets a little older, and he gets to retirement age, and then everybody's, his people are, his son takes over his business, and then, and he's kind of pushed aside a little bit. And it can be very difficult for an elderly man. An elderly man who's been involved in Torah, so as the older he gets in Torah learning, he becomes even a bigger scholar. The Torah leaders of the generation are 90 and 100 years old. The older you get, the better you get. But a man who is in the Western world, as you get older, you're retired, and they move you aside, and then they bring in the fresh blood. So it's very easy for a person to feel that as he's getting older, maybe he's losing something. So there's only one type of food in the food world. There may be a couple of others, but there's one type of food that the older it gets, the better it gets. That's wine. Wine. If you age wine, okay, they do cheese also, but often when you age cheese, it's just to get it to a certain point. It's not even to make it better, just to get it. Unless you age it, it doesn't even become cheese. Okay, it could be cheese. It could be what do you call it, salami. In Chicago was the kosher bakery. The donuts were better, the second day than they were the first day. They started out stale and they got better as they went along. So, but in general, wine is the thing that symbolizes aging. The age wine they actually had in years back, probably about 15 years ago, when there was an incident. They found a bottle of wine. They had a bottle of wine from the time of Napoleon. And they called all the beautiful people together with their tuxedos to come out. They're going to have the grand opening. This bottle is 200 years old. And like a story out of Monty Python. The waiter comes in with the bottle on a tray, and all the beautiful, elegant people and they're all waiting to taste this wine, and of course the waiter slipped on the polished marble or something, and like a story out of a book. The waiter comes in, and the wine fell on the bottle, cracked, and all the elegant people, without a moment's hesitation, dove down and started looking it up. With all when it's important enough in life, you don't really care what anybody else thinks. All the elegant people hope they can get glass on their tongue, but they went looking up the wine. Sometimes people say, "Well, I'm too embarrassed to wear my yarmulke." If it's important enough for you. Important enough for you wear the yarmulke. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. There was a story, a guy who came into it. There was a bank manager. Something happened. The bank manager decided he's going to start becoming frum. So he decided he's going to do two things. He's going to daven. He's going to put on tefillin every morning, and he's going to wear a yarmulke when he eats. Those are the first two commitments that the guy made. All right. So the first morning he gets up. He decides he puts on his tefillin, and then he goes to breakfast and he eats his breakfast with the yarmulke. And he takes off his yarmulke. He goes to work. He's sitting in the bank, and then it's time to eat lunch. He pulls out his lunch bag, and he reaches for his yarmulke, and he says, "Well, I can't do this. This is going to look funny. People around, and nobody saw me." They go, "Huh?" He's going back and forth. He says, "I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't put on my yarmulke. What are people going to think?" Just then the door of the bank opens, and one of the wealthy patrons of the bank comes in, and he wants to deposit some of these rare gold coins that he has in a safety deposit bag. And as he's walking in, somebody bangs into it or something. The whole bag spills, and these gold coins go rolling around the bank. And without a moment's hesitation, this very, very prominent, dignified man dives down on his stomach, and he's crawling around the bank to get, to pick up his gold coins. The manager is watching us. He says, "Listen, that guy doesn't care what anybody thinks of him. He's crawling around like a fish. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks of him, because it's important enough. So why should I care?" So he put on his yarmulke and he ate his lunch. That's a rule in life. It's important enough to you. I really don't care. And usually the test is if you were being paid for it. A guy says to me, "I don't know if I can get up for minyan tomorrow morning." "Oh yeah, I'll give you $50. $50 if you're on time for Shacharis." Ding, ding, ding. He's up. No snooze alarm, nothing. He'll be there. So I know a guy from the other yeshiva who was actually paid to be part of a minyan. They needed a minyan somewhere in England. They had to make a minyan, so they paid young guys to be there on Shabbos morning or during the week. I don't remember what it was. And they paid them. They were there. They were there on time. They were there like they're giving out cotton candy. For $20. Amazing what kind of motivation. Dr. J, they once asked Dr. J. Remember Julius Irving? Dr. J, they asked him once if he could touch the top of the backboard. They asked him, "Can you reach the top of the backboard?" He was a great jumper. They said, "Can you touch the top of the backboard?" He said, "Put a $20 bill up there. We'll all find out." For what do you call it? It's only a question. It's important enough, so you do it. So a person understands. Oh, I heard an unbelievable story. I got to tell you this. It's an unbelievable story. There was a young guy from California. As a kid, he was growing up, and his goal was to become a big shot lawyer, big firm lawyer, big shot lawyer. And he came from a modern Orthodox home, and he went to a very fancy private high school. And he said, "I don't care," and they were giving him a hard time. He wore his yarmulke. He always wore his yarmulke. Would not take off his yarmulke. Finished the high school. He got into one of the top, most prestigious colleges. So the first day of college, he gets called. He's in the college, and he gets called in by the president of the university. He calls him in. He says, "Goldstein, listen. I know what you did in high school, but around here we don't wear those beanies on our head in the school. If you want to stay in the school, you have to go keep the beanie. You can't take off the beanie." He said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I'm not going to take off this beanie. Even if I can't stay in the school." He said, "Goldstein, that's what I figured you would say. We read we had the recommendations from high school, and you came highly recommended. And you know what? I'm going to let you keep the yarmulke. Just don't disappoint me. Don't disappoint me. I know that you're a guy, principal. Don't disappoint me." Okay? Goldstein doesn't disappoint. Goes through 4 years of school, never takes off his yarmulke. All the professors love him, and he manages to get through 4 years of school. And he gets right before graduation, he gets a call from the president. Comes at the office, says, "Goldstein, look, they're the top, most prestigious law firm in the country of Lee, Murphy, Hendricks, and whatever it is. They got 3 candidates for a job. It's the most prestigious law firm in the country. You are on the list of the final. They had a chart. You are on the list. There are 3 final candidates. You, and there's one guy from Northwestern, there's another guy from MIT, whatever it is. And the only thing is, Goldstein, when you go for your interview, I don't know if they're going to be as sympathetic to the cause as we have been. So, this is a chance of a lifetime. I don't know if you should keep the yarmulke on." So Goldstein says, "Sir, I don't plan on taking off my yarmulke." He says, "Well, good luck." Yeah, okay. He says to him, "Listen, I think, as far as I know, my information, you've got the inside track over the other 2 candidates. Just don't blow it, And I don't know how sympathetic. So Goldstein says, no, I'm not going to do it. Never took it off. I never will. Goldstein gets the date if his interview comes, and he goes to the office. He starts walking. He's in the waiting room, and the carpeting in the waiting room is up to the ankles. He's thinking, well, this is really the big time here, And he's thinking, I don't know, maybe one time I should take off my yarmulke. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't. And just then the secretary buzzes, Mr. Goldstein, your interview, and in a reflex, he just takes off the yarmulke, puts it in his pocket, and he walks into the office. As soon as into the office, he knew he made a mistake. Mr. Lee is sitting there with the yarmulke on, Mr. Hendricks, Mr. Murphy, they all got yarmulkes on their head. And Lee looks at him and he says to him, Goldstein, where's your yarmulke? He goes, well, I didn't know, he says, well, Goldstein, I want to tell you something. You just made a mistake. My name is Lee, shortened from Leibowitz. This is my friend Murphy, shortened from Murphyovich. And this is Hendricks, whose original name is Cohen. And, Goldstein, we know more about you than you know yourself. The reason we called you for an interview was we were told that you're a person who would never compromise your principles. Do you really think there aren't anybody else who are as skilled lawyers as you? There are plenty of skilled lawyers, but we were told that you're outstanding that you will adhere to all principles and never compromise them. You will not get the job in our firm. You are not going to get the job in our firm. That's why we wanted you. Good luck, whatever you do, and that was the end of it. So Goldstein wrote this story 40 years later. Goldstein then eventually became a lawyer, had a small firm somewhere in LA, never made the big time. And Goldstein learned, I never did take my yarmulke off after that interview. But there are times in life where, you got a principle. You have a principle, stand by your principle. Don't compromise your principle for anything. People respect you more when you don't compromise your principle. So Yosef sends a message to number one, he sends wine to Yaakov Avinu, because this is his way of identifying himself. Don't you understand? Yosef is telling Yaakov Avinu, as the king of Egypt, what's Yaakov's going to be concerned about when the brothers say Yosef's alive and he's the king of Egypt? What do you think Yaakov's first concern is going to be? Who is he? Imagine getting a message, you haven't seen your son for 22 years, and your message, well, yeah, I'm the president of the fraternity at Florida State University. Yeah, well, how decadent have you become? What level of decadence? You're the viceroy of Egypt. And Egypt is a den of iniquity. What's Yaakov's first concern is going to be Yosef's spiritual side, not his physical existence. Where are you? Where are you holding life? Yosef says to Yaakov, here's some old wine. Meaning, I recognize still that you, who represent all of our values, have gotten better as you've gotten older. That means I'm still buying into those values you instilled in me when I was in your home. And not only that, I have gotten better. The wine represents that I've aged and gotten better as well. I have not been sucked in by the decadence of Egypt, number one. Number two, there's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says that one of the Tanoim had an argument with another Tana, a certain halachic argument, and he paskined differently. Rebbe Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he became a policeman, not by choice. The local non-Jewish government saw that he had the skills to become a policeman, and he had no choice. He had to work as a law enforcement official for the local government. And part of his job was that he was arresting Jews who were criminals. So a certain Jew saw him, and there was a dispute between him and one of the other Tanoim whether or not he should be turning in Jews who are breaking crimes or breaking the law. And he was of the halachic opinion that you do. A certain Jew saw him, and he insulted him. He said to him, "You're vinegar, the son of wine." What is vinegar relative to wine? It's wine that's gone bad. That was the insult. You're vinegar, the son of wine. Meaning your father, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you're the Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. Your father, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, was obviously wine. You're vinegar, the son of wine. You're wine that's gone bad. That was the insult. And then the Gemara goes, there's a whole story that unfolds afterwards. Yosef is sending a message of fine wine. What is it Yosef telling Yaakov Avinu? I've not gone bad. Otherwise I would have sent you vinegar. I've not gone bad. I'm still the fine wine that you left me. I've only gotten better. And therefore Yaakov sees in this a message from Yosef. This is one of the messages that Yosef sends to Yaakov. Then in the next pasuk he says, "Veishalach esecha ve'yelech v'yomer lama al tirgezu badorach." Don't become agitated on the way. Now, what Yosef is concerned again on the plain meaning is when he sends his brothers up. The brothers are going, it's your fault that we did this. It's your fault. They're going to get into a family feud over here about whose fault it was that they sold Yosef originally. But again, Rashi says, Al tirgazu b'derech. Al says Rashi. It's the right column, fourth line. Al tisasku b'davar halacha shelo tirgaz alechem aderech. Don't get so involved in a Torah discussion that you lose your way. And sometimes, people can get so involved in a Torah discussion they forget where they are. I don't know if they're coming or going. You should be involved in a Torah discussion, but be careful. Don't get too involved. Sometimes you watch a guy on the street reading a newspaper. He's so involved. He bangs into a tree. Sorry, ma'am, I didn't. He's just so involved. He's reading the sports results from yesterday. He can't put down the newspaper. Al tirgazu b'derech. Don't get so involved that they're gonna be sidetracked. Okay, so they go up to Mitzrayim. Vayalu mi Mitzrayim v'yo eretz Canaan al Yaakov. Now you got a problem over here because you got to break the news to Yaakov Avinu. Yosef's alive. What are they concerned about? What are they concerned about?
The shock would kill him.
The shock could kill him. I mean, you tell a guy all of a sudden, you won $1 million. Whoa, by the way, gentlemen, test me, try me, right? But there's always the concern. You tell somebody you won $1 million. You could. What do you call it? I just heard an interesting halachic shaila. There was a drawing in Israel. There was some sort of drawing for one of these religious. What do you call it? And they called the guy up. And they said to him, Goldstein, you just won 1 million shekels. At the time, it was about $300,000. You just won 1 million shekels in the drawing. What do you call it? They go, 1 million shekels is terrific. Goldstein says to his wife, let's buy tickets. We'll go visit my parents in Chutz La'aretz. We haven't visited them. We'll fulfill the mitzvah of Kibbut Avayim. They call up, make hotel reservations, plane reservations. The next day, the lawyer calls up for the thing and says, sorry, we made a mistake. It wasn't you, it was somebody else. So then the halachic question becomes now he can't cancel his plane reservation tickets and he can't cancel the hotel. It's going to cost them money. Do they have to pay for it because it was their mistake and based on their mistake? That becomes a whole halachic question. Who's got to pick up the loss now? But can you imagine when you do to somebody? You tell me win $1 million, and then you tell them the next day you didn't win $1 million. You could do to somebody. The shock could kill a guy. They had a story. About a guy who took blood tests in a hospital. Very wealthy man took blood tests in a hospital. And they called him up with the results from the hospital, and they said, "Sorry, we hate to inform you, you have 6 months to live. You have a disease, you have 6 months to live." The guy started giving all his money away. He started giving everything. They gave it all away to charities, to this, that, and 3 weeks later they call up, "Hi, Mr. Burns. We're calling from the hospital. I'm sorry, we made a mistake. Actually, it wasn't you. It was somebody else. You're fine. No problem. Thank you. Have a nice day. And the guy giving away all his money. The guy, or half his money, he gave away all his money. So he must have some good legal fund there. A guy all of a sudden he was told 6 months to live. All of a sudden, hey, that's great. What am I going to live with? Now all of a sudden he's giving it all away. So they're worried about the shock. What are you going to do? You get the shock. So how do you break the news to Yaakov Avinu? How are you going to break the news? So there's a very an interesting medrash here. Vayagidu lo leimor od Yosef chai, v'chi hu moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, vayofeg libo ki lohem min lohem. They said Yosef's alive and he's ruling in Mitzrayim, and Yaakov vayofeg libo. How does the article translate it? But his heart rejected it, for he could not believe them. And so Vayidabro elav is called Divrei Yosef asher dibra elav spoke. They told him everything. He said, Vayaris ha'agolos asher sholach Yosef lo so. He saw the wagons. Vatechi ruach Yaakovim. Yaakov's ruach came to life. 22 years he had lost his ruach hakodesh because he was in a state of mourning, and now he hears Yosef alive, and he comes spiritually back to life. So there's a very interesting medrash that how do you break the news to Yaakov Avinu? So this is a medrash. All the little girls, they even made a song in the Gan, that there was a girl named Serach Bas Usher, Yaakov's granddaughter, and she knew how to play the harp. I think it was the harp. And she came in to Yaakov Avinu, and she started singing. She started playing music, and she started singing slowly, da-da-da-da-da, Yosef, da-da-da-da-da, Yosef, something like, and Yaakov's like, well, what about Yosef, what about Yosef? She starts playing, and she starts singing to him slowly and gently that Yosef's alive. Yosef's alive. She starts singing that. And Yaakov, according to the Medrash, she brought him back to life. They said, you should be blessed for eternal life, and she goes into Gan Eden alive, and the Medrash says she's one of 9 people who never died a regular death, because Yaakov blessed her because she brought him to life, so he gave her his granddaughter a blessing, Serach Bas Asher. She brought Yaakov, and then she is the one who's alive when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, Pakod Pakadati, I'm the Redeemer. How do we know you're the Redeemer? A guy comes along and says the code word. Anybody can make up the code word. Serach Bas Asher was still alive at the end of the redemption from Egypt, and she's the one who said that is the code word that's been passed down. He's the Redeemer. She was the one who ratified it because she was the one who lives forever. So that's how they bring Yaakov alive. Now, there's a remarkable idea here. The commentaries say, did you ever hear the Egla Arufa? The Egla Arufa is a halacha we find later in the Torah. They find a body. There's a dead body. A Jew's been murdered. And they find the body. They don't know who killed him. So what they do is they measure to the nearest city. And the nearest city has to bring a calf. And they break the calf's neck as an atonement for the city, for this guy having been found murdered near the city. What's the assumption? The assumption is that the people of the city, that when they sent him off, did you ever hear the idea that you're supposed to escort your guest 4 amos when he leaves your house? You walk him 4 amos. Now, the idea of walking him 4 amos, the Gemara says if you escort your guest 4 amos, he'll be protected from harm. So one thing got to do with the other. You protect you. You walk him 4 amos, he'll be protected from harm. Why should he be protected from harm? What's one thing got to do with the other? The answer is that when you walk your guest 4 amos, it doesn't just mean from your front door. One of the ideas is that when you walk a guest, it makes the guest feel that he was your guest. It's hard for you to let him go. It's hard for you, like I walk him 4 amos to make sure he goes. But it's hard for you. You walk him 4 amos because it's 4 amos makes it seem like it's hard for you. It's hard for you to let go of him. It makes the guy feel good. But part of the idea is that when you walk a guest, so any highwaymen or bandits or robbers who are waiting to mug him as he leaves the city limits, when you walk your guests, so they see that there's somebody he's accountable. Say they'll be somebody cares about this guy. If a guy just wanders by himself, he's the drifter in all the westerns. He's a classic Shane. The drifter who comes into town. Nobody knows him. Nobody's missing him. If the guy kills somebody, nobody knows if he's dead or alive. Here, when you walk somebody 4 amos, he's protected because the highwayman will be intimidated to start up with him. So Yosef sends Yaakov wagons. And the wagons are a code. Now listen to this incredible idea. Why does he send them wagons? Take a look at Rashi. It's a left column, second line. Es kol divrei Yosef, second line from the top in the left column. Simon Masar lahem, he gave them a sign. Bima haya osei kipirish mimeno, what Gemara, what Torah section were they learning when Yosef left? Yosef and Yaakov used to learn Torah together. What were they learning? Biparshas Egla Arufa. They were studying the section of the Egla Arufa. Why were they studying specifically? How providential that they were studying Egla Arufa. You understand where this is going? And then Yosef sends them wagons. The name a wagon in Hebrew is called an agalah, like egla, it's the exact same word. And that's a sign to Yaakov, well, that must be your son Yosef, because he even remembers the last thing you were learning. And he sent you an agalah, which is like egla, and that's the sign to show you that, yeah, that must be Yosef. Because only Yosef would know what the two of you were learning last. Wow, beautiful. And Yaakov said, oh, that must be Yosef. And even the Gemara says, if you ever part from somebody, you should part with the dvar halacha. If you ever have a friend and the two of you are taking leave of each other, say a dvar Torah. Because that way you'll remember him. He'll remember you. Right? If you part with nonsense, you won't remember it. But if you say a dvar Torah, you'll remember each other. I always say, lend him $20, then you'll remember him. All right, he'll remember you, he'll try to forget you, but you'll remember him all right. Okay, but the Gemara says part with the dvar Torah, dvar halacha. So Yosef says, the last thing we were learning is Egla Arufa. What's Egla Arufa got to do with this? See, you know what the answer is? Why does a person run into trouble when he goes somewhere if you didn't escort him? According to the commentators, I can't believe this, the commentators say Yosef was actually sending Yaakov a sad message, saying, Dad, remember how all this started? Remember you sent me off to check how the brothers are going, how the brothers are doing? But you didn't escort me. You didn't escort me. Look what all this led to. Look what all this led to. This all led to me being captured and sent away. We're separated for 22 years. So Yosef is sending a message to Yaakov Avinu. On the one hand, that's what we were learning. On the other hand, Dad, just remember where all this started. Would you think that's insensitive? That's what you send to your father for 22 years. Dad, by the way, a little bit of this is partly your fault. Now, there are commentaries that say to the contrary. He did escort him, and that's why he wasn't killed. Our commentaries say to the contrary. Yaakov did escort him. There are different opinions among the commentaries. What was the message? One message was, you did escort me, and that's why I'm alive even to send this. There's another opinion that he was sending it, hey, Dad, if you would have escorted me, none of this would have happened. Different opinions. But according to those commentaries, doesn't it seem strange, does it strike you as strange that Yosef was sending Yaakov a message like that at this point? Do you want to hear something incredible? You know what the Ramban says? The Ramban says, Vayafag libo, Yaakov actually had heart stoppage. He had heart stoppage. Yosef's alive? Yosef anticipated that would happen, that the joy would be such a joy, that he'd actually get to the point where he could experience heart stoppage. So you know what Yosef did? He sent another message, a sad message, to counter it. Yosef was doing it in order to neutralize the potency of the happy message. Yosef's alive, look at the wagon. Oh. Right? Just when you're happy, you want $1 million. Really? Yeah, your mother-in-law is going to be bringing it tomorrow. Yeah. Is there anybody else? It just neutralizes the what do you call it? You know the story, I told you the story about old Mr. Murphy who won $10 million? Ever tell you a story? Old Mr. Murphy won $10 million. He won in the lottery, won $10 million. The family had to break the news to him. They're worried he was going to get a heart attack. I tell old Mr. Murphy he's going to. So they decided to hire an expert psychologist. So the psychologist comes in. He's an expert. Let me take care of this. I'm an expert. The psychologist comes in. He says, hey, Murph, what would you do if I told you won $100? So Murphy looks at the psychologist. He goes, well, I'd keep 50 and I'd give you 50. Psychologist says, what would you do if I told you won $10,000? He goes, well, I'd take 5,000. I'd give you 5,000. Psychologist starting to sweat. He says, what would you do if I told you won $10 million? He said, well, I'd take $5 million and give you $5 million. Psychologist had a heart attack and died on the spot. So it's a joke, Dave. This is laugh. Here's the laugh sign. Laugh. I guess you had to be there. So that's what Yosef is worried about, huh?
If I was there, I could have saved him.
You could have saved him, right? Yeah. So I would have let me save you, brother. Okay. So Yaakov goes, and Yaakov says, good, let me, Vayisa Yaakov, Yomer Yisrael, Ravod Yosef ben Yichayel, Chaveram Teramos. Yaakov says, let me go see Yosef before I die. Okay. So now, skip on ahead, and he's heading down to meet Yosef. Now, go to page 260. So Yaakov gets a message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to go down to Mitzrayim, and then at the bottom of page 260, 4 lines from the bottom, Ve'es Yehuda shalach lefanav el Yosef lahoros lefanav Goshen. Now he sends Yehuda on ahead to go to Goshen, which I don't know how the art scroll tried to prepare ahead of him in Goshen. That's very good. Lahoros literally means to instruct. The art scroll translates to prepare ahead of him, because Yehuda is going there to prepare batei medrashos, that they're going to study Torah. He's going there. First thing, Jews are moving in. First thing that you have to prepare is first Chinese restaurants, and then batei medrashos. And so the Jews are going in, and you got to prepare for the Jews. The Jews are coming. There was a famous argument between a Jewish guy and a Chinese guy. We're arguing about whose culture came first. So the Chinese guy says to the Jewish guy, our culture is 2,000 years old. The Jew says, well, ours is 3,000 years old. So the Chinese guy says, that's impossible. He says, why? He says, well, where do your people eat for those first 1,000 years? The first thing you got to set up is a base medrash. Vayavo artsa Goshen. They come to the land of Goshen. Now, what is Yosef's reaction? Vayeser Yosef merkavto. Yosef hitches up his wagon. Vayal likras Yisrael aviv Goshen. He goes out towards his father. Vayera elav. Yosef appears to him. In those words right there, there's a lesson. Yosef appears to his father. What does that tell you? What does it tell you? Yosef appears to his father. There are two conflicting purposes for Yosef's visit. There's number one, his desire to see his father. And there's number two, his mitzvah of allowing his father to see him. Vayera Elav, Yosef appears to his father. In other words, page 260, towards the bottom. Bottom 260. What is Yosef's main focus here? As much as he wants to see his father, what's his main focus? To honor his father by allowing his father to see him. Vayera Elav, he appears to his father. Vayipol al tzavarav, he falls upon his father's shoulder. Vayefka al tzavarav, and he cries excessively on his father's neck. Sorry, not his shoulder, his neck. He falls upon his father's neck and he cries, ArtScroll translate, excessively. He cries a lot on his father's neck. What seems to be missing here?
Talking.
No talking. What else is missing? What seems to be missing here?
Yaakov's reaction.
Yaakov's reaction. Next pasuk, Vayomer Yisrael, Yaakov starts talking. Yosef, I'm ready to die. I mean, yeah, okay, Yaakov starts talking. What seems to be missing from the text? Yosef cries. Who do you think it's harder for the separation, the child or the parent? Who do you think suffers more at the loss, a child or a parent? A parent. Nothing is devastating. Chas v'shalom, Rachmana litzlan, a parent loses a child is far more devastating than a child losing a parent. Nothing is more devastating. A child loses a parent, that's the way of the world. A parent loses a child, it's absolute devastation. They never get over it. Child loses a parent, okay, it's hard, it says it's easy, but that's the way of the world. A child eventually, gets through it, grows up, whatever it is, depending on what age he loses a parent. But a parent loses a child. Nothing hurts more. I mean, if anybody's doing the crying over here, who should be doing the crying? If there's a tearful reunion, who should be doing the crying? Yaakov. Yaakov should be doing the crying over here. And it doesn't say a word about Yaakov crying. Why not? So take a look at Rashi. 2 lines, left column of Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom. Left column of Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom, right in the middle of the column. Says Rashi, quoting the Medrash, Aval Yaakov lo nafal al tzavari Yosef. Yaakov did not fall upon Yosef's neck. Yosef falls upon Yaakov's neck, Yaakov didn't fall upon Yosef's neck. V'lo nashako, and he didn't kiss him. Doesn't kiss Yosef after 22 years. Why not? The Amar Rabbi Seino, the Gemara says, Shehaya Korei Eshma. Yaakov was saying Kriya Shema. I mean, what a providential time to be saying Shema. Why was Yaakov saying Shema now? If you had Zman Kriya Shema, Dave, right? You got to get that last Kriya Shema. So if it's Zman Kriya Shema for Yaakov, it's Zman Kriya Shema for Yosef also. I mean, Yaakov couldn't daven beforehand. Right now. Yeah, well, Yaakov forgot to daven that morning, and he met Yosef right at the end of Zman Kriya Shema, Magen Avram, Vilna Gaon Zman, whatever it is, and now he's got to say Kriya Shema. Of all times to say Kriya Shema. And if he say Kriya Shema, why does Yosef say Kriya Shema? Yosef also keeps the mitzvahs. So obviously there's a little bit...
He thought he was about to die.
What's that?
He had fulfilled his life's mission. So before he died, he wanted to say Shema.
Hey, it's interesting. My daughter said to me that it could be that Yaakov felt he was so nervous about the joy that he was worried that he was going to explode from the joy that he's saying Kriya Shema because he feels he's about to die. He feels like, I better say Shema. I'm so happy, I better say Shema. That's because this way. Shema, so a guy feels he's about to die, says Kriya Shema. Could be. So the commentaries say like this. You see, what's going on over here is like this. I mean, imagine you're Yosef. What would you expect from your father? From your father grabbing a bear hug? All of a sudden your father like, Shema Yisrael, Dad, I know you're from, but now, now of all times, Shema Yisrael, that's what you couldn't say, you're so machmir. I mean, what happened over here? And Yosef doesn't know that. If Yosef's crying and he knows he's not being hugged or kissed, what's going on? So I think the idea is like this. I think the different ideas the commentators give. I think one of the explanations, Yaakov wants to take any joy that he would feel, any joy that he possibly feels, he wants to channel it straight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He wants to create such a bond with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that any human joy that he feels, he wants to devote that joy to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, that's one of the explanations. I think it's a little more than that. I think it's a very powerful idea here. What do you think? Imagine you're Yaakov Avinu. Yosef is your prime disciple and you've lost him for 22 years. Aside from the fatherly emotion, what do you think Yaakov really feels he's lost out on? What do you think Yaakov's lost out on over here? What's Yaakov in his own heart? What's he lost out on? This is his disciple. This is the one he's passing the torch to. What would he have wanted more than anything else for those 22 years? To be able... What's that? What would he want with Yosef, though?
Teach him more.
To teach him. He want to train him. I want to instill in him the values more than anything else. Yaakov understands, I've lost 22 years. I'm going to have to come up with a lesson now to make up for everything that I couldn't do in the last 22 years. I'm going to give him such a lesson. I'm going to give him a lesson now that he's never going to forget, ever, ever, ever. Yosef lives to 110. He's never going to forget this lesson. You know what the lesson is? He's going to teach his son that no matter how much I love you, I love Hashem more. That a Torah Jew understands we love Hashem. That our life is devoted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Forget love. We're totally devoted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know how Yaakov does that? At one good zoomer boomer of a lesson. At the point where Yosef understands that there's nothing his father wants more than to hug him and to kiss him, Yaakov says, Shema Yisrael Shem Hashem, devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I guarantee you Yosef heard that lesson. Yosef was like hugging him, why not? Shema Yisrael. Wow. No matter how much he loves me, he loves Hashem. No matter how devoted he is to be devoted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's a lesson that will make up for 22 years of not having been able to instill that value in you. Now you're going to get that value. Now you're going to understand that value. That's the lesson. A child who's taught a lesson, there's sometimes in life a child who's taught a lesson, and it's a lesson you're never going to forget. And often it's a result of something you see your parents doing, not something they're telling you. Just something that they do, and you go, wow, that I'm never going to forget. Right? What my parents do to me, I try to forget. But what my parents do, when I see my parents' behavior in other areas, that's a lesson a child never forgets. That's a lesson a child never forgets. I told you about the woman, there was a family that was in, a family that was living somewhere in some small hick town. They had to live there for her father was a business, and they were the only Jews in town. Only Jews in town. Every Shabbos, they never had guests on Shabbos, never had anything. And they were the only Jews, there was nobody around. And one of the kids noticed every Friday night, the mother put an extra chair by the table. An extra chair by the table. So one Friday night, the kids didn't pay attention. One Friday night, the kid notices this is happening every Friday night. He said, why are you putting a chair by the table? So I said, look, where we came from a big Jewish community. We used to have guests at our house all the time. Now here, we have to be here for a while. Unfortunately, we can't have guests. But I don't want that we should forget that there's a mitzvah of bringing guests into the home. So I put a chair by the table. Maybe one day a guest will come in, and this way at least we'll remember that we should be having guests. That lesson is going to last longer for the child than any lesson of seeing guests at the table. Because he really drove the lesson was driven in a very, very powerful way. This is what the kid sees the mother do. I always tell, but mothers, did your mothers ever wash your mouth out with soap? They do that? Your mother actually did that? Okay, so there are certain mothers who do that. There was a very, kid says a bad word, mother washes mouth out. I always tell the mothers when I speak, like their rarest mother, so you want to really teach your kid a lesson about that. All the kid learns from there is don't say bad words around adults with soap. You learn not to say bad words, just don't say it around the wrong people. If you see an adult with soap, don't say, you want to teach your kids a lesson? The next time you say a bad word. I always tell the mothers, I'd love to see you Erev Shabbos when you have guests coming and you're running around doing a million things, and that last kugel in the oven, and you saw, oh no, it's burning. She walks into the kitchen and the kugel burnt. She gives one of those woman stops. You ever see a woman in front of her? Like that. I would love to hear it. And then she says something, she says like a bad word. So something slips out. You know what you do? Call your kids into the kitchen and say, okay guys, I said a bad word, watch this. And the mother should drink some soap. That'll go much further than torturing the kid with soap. That the kid is never going to forget. That's the Shema Yisrael that Yaakov Avinu is saying. Do you know that after the Holocaust, they used to go, the Catholics, there were a lot of Jewish war orphans. They had been raised in the Catholic Church. So Rabbi Herzog had made a deal with Pope Pius, who wasn't, by the way, he made a deal with Pope Pius that he wants the Jewish war orphans. So Pope Pius gave up 4,000 out of 12,000 Jewish war orphans. In the meantime, Rabbi Eliezer Silver from Cincinnati was also looking for Jewish war orphans. So he was an army chaplain, and he would walk in Europe. He would go into churches in the middle of the service. He would take a couple of United States Marines, a couple of big guys with him. He would walk right up to the front of the church, and he would say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And he would look to see the kids' reactions. And any kid who instinctively started doing like this, he knew that was a Jewish kid. Because that's one of the first things kids hear. Jewish children hear before they go to sleep at night with their parents. One of the first things that the Jewish kids hear is they hear Shema Yisrael. So that was his way of identifying the Jews. All right, to be continued.